This podcast was sponsored by and recorded at Crossings Pub and Eatery on Hyde Park.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be finding us on the World Wide Web and in cyberspace. We welcome you back to another edition we like to call the magical experience of the Vicars Crossing. And it's good to have you back with us. My name is Rob Henderson, and I'm the rector and priest at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's Anglican Church on the corner of Wellington and Southdale in Chatham. And I'm here once again with Kevy. How you doing?
I'm good, my friend. Kevin George is the name. Revy Kevy is the game.
All right.
I am the priest at St. Aidan's Church. If you're in the London area, we're in northwest corner of the city. We like to hang out on the bog.
All right, and today we're hanging out, as always, at Crossings Pub and Eatery.
Great spot.
On Hyde Park.
How can you complain? I forgot to let them know I was coming today.
I know. Well, they had to prepare the room for us, so
Right,
I think
because-
our heads are getting a little big here.
Yeah, I
little worried
failed.
about that.
I failed to do that. So my apologies to Stephen Rogers, the manager here,
Okay.
for not letting them know. But what a pro crew! They set it all up.
Yep.
They had no problems with any of that.
And we're all ready to go. And
Which
we've
is always good.
We've got our afternoon beverages ready. Again, I'm going to Chatham. I always end up in Chatham.
Yeah,
with
what
the-
is it with you?
with
It's
the
like you have
Sons of
this.
Kent.
You keep getting sucked back to Chatham, like
Well, I
some
do.
sort of
I
a
mean,
vortex.
I
like,
spent a lot of good years there.
is that right?
I met my wife in Chatham.
Okay.
My boys were born in Chatham, so I guess
That's
I
where
just
things
gotta
went
go
south
home.
for her, is what you're saying.
That's right, exactly. It's all downhill. All downhill. So a little Sons of Kent for me. And where did you go?
I went to Toronto for Ace Hill, and this is the first time I've had this one, actually, which there's not a lot of beer in the province that I can say I haven't sampled.
That's right.
But this is one I had not yet tried, and it's a very nice, crisp, clear lager. It's a nice, easy drinking beer. I'd recommend it. You can pick it up here at Crossings. We've got our guest, Jennepher Cahill, is here, and you're drinking?
Guinness.
Guinness. All right.
So they're very hell-bent on Irish stuff in her house.
Well, my understanding is there's a little Irish blood in the family, so we got to kind of keep the theme going. Yeah,
Keep to the traditions.
That's right, exactly. Well, welcome, Jennepher. We're glad you're here today. Jennepher's with the United Way here in London. We're going to be chatting a bit about the work that you do and the folks at the United Way do as we come to the end of this year, and some of the issues and things that you're working on and things that you're challenged with, but it's a good opportunity to share some information about that. So we're glad you're aboard with us today. And Ian's here, producer Ian. How we doing?
Pretty good, yeah,
Good?
pretty good.
We were just saying you're just about finished school for
Yeah.
for the break.
Yeah,
All right, good.
Yeah.
Good. And you passed there all your. I guess you don't have exams, but you're.
my exams are in January.
Yeah.
so
Okay. So you
we'll
gotta
worry
gear
about
up for
those when
that.
we get there. Yeah.
Good.
He was, the last time I was talking to him, he was doing his best Bill Clinton impersonation.
Oh,
right?
really?
He was up on the stage playing a sax solo. And, it was, people were melting.
Nice.
They were melting.
Nice.
They
What
were
does that
like
have to-
Frosty the Snowman.
What does that have to do with Bill Clinton?
Well, you see, you're not old enough for that.
See, yeah, you're going back.
Generational
You're
gap
talking.
there.
Yeah, you're going back 20
Well,
something years.
Ian, did you ever hear of Arsenio Hall? No.
No.
So
No.
Arsenio,
Straight two. Yeah.
so Arsenio is a comedian. He used to have a late night show on Fox. I think it was on Fox, yeah. And
I think
then
so.
and one night when Bill Clinton was running for president, he had him on the show. And Bill Clinton joined the band and put on a pair of shades and broke out a tenor sax and played an incredible
And
sax.
his numbers went through
Well,
the roof.
he went right
All
through the
of a
roof
sudden
after
people
that.
said, "This is
Next
our guy."
thing you know, he was president of the United
That's
States,
right.
man.
There you go.
So,
Wow,
yeah.
I'm glad I had so much to look up to.
Yeah, I know. One day you could sit in the same seat that Donald Trump is sitting in. No, you can't because you weren't born in the United States.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's how that
we
works.
can-
That's
only
how it
hope,
works.
yeah.
Sorry, man.
It's all good.
Good. Well, Kevin, do you want to introduce Jennepher?
Sure.
A little bit more?
I'm
And,
going to get Jennepher to introduce herself a little bit in terms of her role at the United Way, but I did want to say that to declare the conflict of interest, as they say in I don't know what business, but in some business. I know Jennepher because she works at the United Way, but I really know Jennepher because she is a parishioner of mine at St. Aidan's Church, where she and her family have been involved for a good number of years now, and the girls have grown up there, your daughters, and she has an incredibly gifted and beautiful family, and they're wonderful people, and I know the heart that Jennepher has for justice and for the work of Mercy in our community. And so she's a perfect guest for us to have on the Vicars Crossing, where we talk about intersectionality between faith and the public square and how those things connect. So having somebody from United Way to be able to come here and talk about the issues that face our community is really a big positive for us. But maybe you can share with those who listen to us a little bit more about your role at United Way, Jennepher.
Okay. I'm the Director of Development, which is sort of a fancy way of saying that I head up the fundraising team for United Way.
And if you'd like to donate, please give Jennepher a call.
Plug, plug, plug.
I'm shameless. I will take any and all help and resources and gifts because the need in our community is great, and we're very lucky in London because we have such a giving community. We punch well above our weight in terms of the generosity of just everyday Londoners all the time, and that's the best part of my job, is that I get to meet people from all walks of life, from CEOs to people who are working on the line in our manufacturing industry, to teachers and lawyers and everybody in between. And I always meet people, and they always want to know what they can do to make a difference in the community. And that's really humbling, and it's really rewarding.
Oh, that's good stuff. And in that role, I'm sure you get to meet a lot of people who not only just are ready to help, but you're also, I know you're on the fundraising end of it, but you also get to interact with those who are obviously in need of services, and the many agencies that the United Way supports, who need that sort of assistance too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We work with over 50 partner agencies across our footprint in Elgin and Middlesex.
Yeah.
We fund 96 different programs.
Wow.
Wow.
And last year, over 85,000 people in the London area accessed a United Way funded service.
Wow, that's
Isn't that
amazing.
something?
Yeah, that is something. I mean,
so everybody knows somebody
Right.
who has, needed that little extra hand up at some point.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and you're on the front line too of a lot of different things that are in and around our community in London. So we wanted to touch on a couple of those things because they've been making the news, and people are talking about them, and they're important. And again, part of what we want to do on our podcast here, the Vicars Crossing, is really bring people into an understanding of what's happening in their communities and where the needs are and so on. So when we were about to get together today, I know we had a few emails going back and forth, and Jennepher was sending some statistics and things along to us about certain
Incredibly so,
issues,
yeah.
and some of the numbers and stuff. But I won't be crunching those per se, but a couple of things that you brought up were issues that we're concerned of. One is local poverty, of course,
Yeah, absolutely.
which we're going to get into, and another was barriers to youth success in our community as well. And so I found this really interesting. The national percentage of kids living in low-income homes right now is 17%, but here in London it's a little over 22%. So we're much higher there, and we're the third highest rate of child poverty of the big cities surveyed across Canada, just behind Windsor and St. John's as well. So those are just a few of the statistics and things that we got from you. So Jennepher, maybe if you could, can you share with our listeners a little about maybe some of the challenges that United Way is seeing on the ground right now based on around those issues, and maybe others if you want to share as well? What kind of things are you seeing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think probably that statistic is the most shocking one, and whenever I share it with people, they honestly, they have to ask me to repeat it, and they're like, are you sure? But yeah, we have the third highest child poverty rate in Canada. And that means 1 in 5 of the children in our schools are living below the poverty line. For me, that's unacceptable and absolutely unignorable. And that's part of our slogan this year, is that there are issues in our community that are unignorable, but for some reason, because they're awkward to talk about, make people feel uncomfortable, it's not something we want to deal with, we choose to ignore them. We choose to not bring them forward and discuss them. And I think that's really important. It's just having that conversation and that acknowledgement that there's such need in our community. And obviously for me, I'm in the fundraising side of things, but a lot of this is our issues, and the solutions just lie in us coming together to find that shared solution, because it's not somebody else's problem. It's all of our problem. It's a shared problem.
Right.
And so we need to get together to find shared solutions, and that's the only way forward, really.
Right.
So when it specifically how it relates to to the child poverty rate, I was thinking about this morning, rereading that again, because it is quite startling.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you come to realize, and sometimes we can be cocooned, right, depending on where we live in London or what we're involved in, our social circles, our work circles. It's easy, I think, with the sort of affluence we have in a community like London, as well as that poverty, to sort of have the blinders on and not see what's going on. Have you some thoughts about how it is that we're able to peel that onion a little bit, peel the layers back? How do we open people's eyes to what those issues are? Because I think you both said it very well when you spoke about how shocking the number is and how people ask for it back. I just wonder, like, what are the strategies? How do we raise the awareness of the plight of young people and children in particular in our community who are living, below the poverty line?
I think we have to change that dynamic, that us and them approach, because at any given time, any of us is facing a big challenge, and you never know when illness or a layoff at work or a family situation, marital breakdown, any of those things that can happen to any of us at any time, really push you to the wall and make you have to make very difficult decisions. I think there's also kind of a myth around choices. We say that people have this freedom of choice, and they're making choices, and there are good choices and there are bad choices. But the truth of the matter is, if you're on a very limited income, you don't have a lot of choices, and you might be making a choice between two bad decisions. Two decisions like, do we eat or do we pay the hydro bill?
Right. Yeah.
That's not really a choice.
It's not, and it's not unique to London here either, right? So anytime we get into an urban center, one of the things that I find interesting as we get into this conversation is sort of urban deserts in a way, right? So it's this business of, I remember when doing some studies in Chicago years ago, going to the south side and seeing in a big city like that just how stark whole neighborhoods are, where there are bottle shops, as they call them, so liquor stores, pawn shops, check-changing operations, and McDonald's. Right. So when you talk about those choices, the choices that people are left to make sometimes when they live in the most abject of poverty, it's not great.
They're not there.
It's just you don't have, and that's, I think, what is for me as a faith leader in the community, I find frustrating in terms of trying to get this across to people sometimes, because that business of there's some moral ineptitude, that they've made some sort of a poor moral choice to be in the poverty that they're in, and if they just didn't do that, then maybe this. But trying to get across to people that we don't all get dealt the same cards, and we don't all start on the same playing field, right? So when it comes to that, I mean, it really becomes a challenge. I know, because you're at the church, I know a little bit about Jennepher and how you approach your own faith journey, and I wonder if you could say a word about, knowing this around child poverty, the housing issues, the youth opportunities, which we'll talk more about, but how do you see the intersectionality between faith communities and those challenges? Rob and I here, and Ian, we've had lots of conversations over the last few months that we've been doing this about how faith interacts with the public square. And I wonder sometimes if we cocoon ourselves in the church and we don't get engaged with these things because we either don't see a role for us or what. But I wonder, like, you work at United Way, you happen to go to a church. Do you see any intersectionality in that?
I think the intersectionality is at the values piece, because if you value human life, if that's important to you, that people can live with dignity and have opportunities and access to your basic human rights, then you're going to be motivated either personally through your faith or as a civic-minded person to make connections to people to enable that to happen for everybody across the board. And I think there's a lot of shared ground there, and we certainly see it working with the community because we work very closely with people of all faith communities.
Sure.
And we have had great response and very, very moving responses from people when we had the newcomers arriving from Syria. That was really a great example because that was a whole community response. And we worked with the London Muslim Mosque, we worked with the Cross Cultural Learners Center, we worked with all of our various partner agencies who do all of the social planning and social services, as well as, you know, the London Community Foundation, the City of London, and all the churches and various synagogues across the city. And that was an amazing outpouring of people coming together, and everybody sort of gave as they could and took as they needed. And I think that's probably that idea of the intersection in action.
Right, and that always is a good reminder to me too, that when we can find those things that all of our different faith communities, regardless of denomination or whether we're coming from a Christian background or a Jewish background or whatever it is, when we find those things that we share in common, which is the dignity of human beings, ensuring that human beings have enough, and that sort of thing. When we can rally around that instead of rallying around the things that separate us and pull us apart that we disagree on. And you just mentioned it, you get to see what actually can happen when we focus on those things. So that's really important for us to remember that at the end of the day, we got to take care of people. And that's important to us.
We've got a common cause in so much of that.
Oh,
too.
very much so, yeah.
I wonder about producer Ian over there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been pretty quiet. But I'm just thinking about the whole, speaking about, you know, youth and child poverty. It happens to be that we have a 17-year-old in the room. And he's an incredible guy. I just wrote him a reference letter, and I said that he was a real pain. And never mind, I won't go into that. But Ian, you're at Central.
Yep.
What do you see? Do you see this child poverty, youth poverty? I mean, do you have people at school who you clearly identify don't have the same opportunities, say, as a kid who's going into Central from Byron?
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of upsetting in a way, just because there's not a lot that we can do. Like, well, there's a lot that we can do, but in the classroom, like, it's not that visible. And that's kind of what it's upsetting. And one of the great things about Central is that we have our United Way program that we've run. I think we called Scrooge, and then there's the Scrooge campaign, and then we do a couple other things throughout the year. And just, we are one of the, like, or from what I know, we are one of the highest, like, high schools that I've donated to United Way, which is, I think, pretty great.
Good for you
and
guys.
That's, like,
well, this is a good
how we get
opportunity
part of
for the fund development officer to let you know how grateful she is.
That's
for
right.
that.
That's right.
Absolutely.
No, we are, and you know what's really brilliant too, when you talk about child and youth poverty and the connection with youth, is that we see this great desire for social justice with the teenagers, the secondary schools across our footprint, and it's really amazing to see them in action. And we do our big community. We only do one big community fundraiser, and that's the Scotiabank stair climb at One London Place. And the high schools come out and they climb, and they get sponsored to climb to the top of One London Place in the stairs. And we have the London Lightning come out, and they do fun things, and they dance, and they warm up, and they take selfies, and it's all really fun. They had signs this year. They were outside that said "honk if you love someone," and they get all done up in their school pride and their T-shirts, and it's really invigorating to see. But each of those kids also comes back with a story, and a bit like Ian was sharing of one of their friends or someone in their family or someone in their class. And it's very moving to see how aware they are and how they really want to get involved. And we have a program at United Way called Youth United, and we have young people who actually they get given money from London Life, Great West Life, and they're the ones who grant that money. Okay. So young people put forward proposals for projects in their communities and in their schools that they see are important and will make an impact for young people in their local neighborhood. They come in, they pitch that to a group of other young people who we've trained and given all the skills to be like a board of directors, and they assess all of these grants and these proposals, and then they actually do sign out the checks, and the money goes out. And then the kids who do the programs, after that program's finished, they have to write up an evaluation and a report and come back to us and tell us what they've done. So it's a real learning process of an empowerment that you can make a difference if you have a good idea. There are opportunities for you to make it real and make it happen, and that it's run by young people for young people.
Yeah, and I remember my kids when they were in high school, and I'd have conversations with them about some of these issues and so on. And typically, and not surprisingly really, they really didn't know what was going on, or they didn't want to pay attention, they weren't paying attention. And it was the same with a lot of their friends and stuff. But when this was the benefit of the United Way coming in and doing these kinds of things, that was their first foray into really getting a taste of what the need was in their communities, and at the very least, getting them to think about how they can contribute to the greater whole. And so that's why I always thought, and I remember that as a kid. I mean, in my day, we had the Red Feather football game.
Ooh.
Right? And that was a big
That sounds
United Way
exotic.
thing. It was the Red Feather. And we would go, and there was a high school football game, but based
Keep it
around
clean,
that
Henderson.
was that, no, I'm not going to go that far today. But based around that was the United Way campaign.
Yeah.
And so for me as a young person, and now as I look back on it, that set the ground of me thinking about the important issues and other people's and social justice issues outside of myself.
It's also like you said, it brings memories. So it's a fun thing to do. That's also for a good cause, which
Right.
is fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you remember that as you like.
you remember
when
that.
you hear
Yeah.
Rob talking about
Yeah.
his red feather over here. Like I mean, it's the same thing. Like you these things that you've been doing, Ian, at school will be instructive because yes, you're doing something good, but there's also there's learning in what you're doing, which I think is incredible, really. What was that bus we went down to see, Rob? Do you remember going to the United Way thing? We saw this bus. Remember we went down to the
The
arena. It
local
was like the
love
love bus.
Oh,
Remember?
that was back in September?
Yeah, I was
When we
wondering.
went-
We should find out from her what's happened to
What's
that bus.
going on? What happened to that bus? We remember being at the.
We went to the United Way to kick off something about a bus. What is that?
Well, it's our local love bus.
The
love
bus.
I know. You make it sound much more exciting than it is. No, we were really fortunate actually. 3M is one of our strong local partners. They're very, very generous, and they sponsor the Harvest Lunch, the 3M Harvest Lunch at Bud Gardens, which marks
You know
kind of
what
our
surprised me
official
about
kickoff.
that? They didn't serve Scotch eggs.
This is what you were worried about.
3M, you know, Scotch
eggs.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right.
goodness.
Anybody cut up yet?
Dum-dum.
Everybody cut up?
Oh, gosh.
Ian, insert drum roll when you're editing this.
Yeah, we have to get 3,000 people through
I know.
lunch.
Yeah.
So I don't.
It was the Scotch,
eggs.
silly Scotch
Scotch
tape
tape,
joke. Okay,
Scotch
go
tape.
ahead. Sorry, Jennepher.
But yeah, no. One of the things they do is they do that that film. They can wrap buses and trains and taxis and stuff in, and so they offered to wrap something for us. And of course, we don't really have anything at United Way because we're all programs based, and the programs are delivered in the areas of need, right? So to be accessible for people. But the Boys and Girls Club, which is one of our partner agencies that we fund, they do have buses that pick up young people across the city and take them to and from the programming. And so we approached them and said, would you let us wrap a bus? And they were great because they lent us a bus and we wrapped it. And our slogan locally for our campaign this year is show your local love, because everybody can do an act of local love, an act of kindness. And that way we were being very inclusive of whether that act is a volunteer act, an advocacy act, a donation. And so we decided that we wanted to show off this bus, which is currently driving around London, picking kids up and dropping
I've
them
seen
off.
the love bus.
Have you
Yeah,
seen the Love
and
Bus?
some of our seniors as well for the Horton Senior programs. And so we decided, well, what would be fun would be to actually like drive it out onto the ice at Bud Gardens. So that's what we did at our kickoff.
Yeah, that was great. Good.
The love bus.
Love the Love Bus. So that's
Yeah,
one.
we went around to all our local communities. So we then did stops for kickoffs in Strathroy, in St. Thomas, and in Elmer, so that we were able to.
So that's an
bring those
important
communities.
component too. I think that it's easy for us, this podcast is recorded here in London, Ontario, and it's easy for us to get focused on the largest of the centres. But the thing to remember here too with the United Way is that you guys are working for centres outside of London.
Yeah, so we're Middlesex and Elgin counties.
Both, yeah.
So that encompasses, in terms of sort of more centres, Strathroy and St. Thomas would be the big ones, but also Elmer, Dorchester, Arva, Lucan, that all falls under our footprint.
So the Love Bus is one initiative that's going on. The other one that we were talking about earlier before we started recording was the 211 initiative as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good one for people to be aware of, especially coming into holiday time. Sometimes things come up in your life or with somebody that you love or somebody that you know, and you don't know how to respond to it because you don't necessarily have the right connections or you don't know where to find help. So if you just pick up the phone and you dial 211, and it's free, it's confidential, it's available 24/7, and you'll get through to somebody, a live person who you can talk to, and you explain what your situation is. So for instance, if you happen to have a relative who's struggling with dementia or Alzheimer's, and you're at that tipping point, especially at Christmas, right, where it's getting a bit emotional, it's getting a bit difficult, you don't know where to access good services for them and where they can turn to help, or you as a carer can turn for help, you call 211 and they will transfer you directly to somebody at the service that's the appropriate service to help you.
Perfect.
So it's kind of like a 911 or a 411, but it's 211 and it's everything social services.
Great, good. And then
What I
that's
like
it's
is,
the liaison to those services.
Is that she said you get a live person?
Yeah.
I
yeah.
hate getting
Oh,
those
boy.
dead people
Yeah,
when I go.
That's right. That's
Well,
right.
it's the
yeah.
computers,
I
right?
know, I
so
know. Another
often you
stupid
get the
joke.
press 2
Yeah,
or press
and you're
3,
pressing
and you're
buttons for
doing
an
this
hour.
forever, and you're on
Yeah.
hold
I
for a
know.
long time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but this is a group of specially trained individuals who are able to sort of deal with whatever it is that you're going through and refer you to the service you want. They might refer you to sort of the supportive listening line or the crisis line,
Right.
because that's not what they're for.
Yeah.
So they might make that referral for you, but they can definitely help you on the day-to-day with any issues you might be having around with a landlord or anything like that.
Tell me about funding, because you do that work.
Mm-hmm.
We have a new government in this province.
Mm-hmm.
They seem intent at the moment on cutting a lot of different programs, particularly as they relate to education, healthcare, decisions around curriculums, those sorts of things. I wonder, has there been any impact on the local level in terms of funding for some of the agencies that you guys fund or the United Way itself? And how do you see, one of the most recent one, which seems sort of heartless to me, is around this sort of extra stuff that was being offered for kids, most of whom will come from that area that we're talking about, where there's a lot of poverty.
Right.
I'm just wondering if you have seen any of that, or what are the concerns, I guess, from the United Way's perspective?
Well, we're waiting to see.
Yeah.
Right, we're kind of early days, not really sure what the total impact is going to be. The feedback from the government is that they're reviewing, right? So we're not sure what the outcomes of those reviews are going to be. We're certainly at the table working closely with City of London, City of St. Thomas, Elgin County. We're in close touch all the time with our MPs and our MPPs to make sure that people's voices are heard, that concerns are raised around these issues, and that there's an understanding at the decision-making tables of what we think is important.
Right.
And where we see that things are currently working well. I think there's a baby in a bathwater issue sometimes, where cuts cut out things that are good and working, as well as
Yes.
things that maybe are perceived as not being as successful. So I think we're really making sure that we have our eye on the ball as a community, and that's for all of our sector.
Sure.
Definitely, we're seeing that that after school thing is concerning, but we're in close conversation all the time with the school boards.
Yeah.
A lot of the programs that we provide, in partnership, for instance, with the YMCA, are actually delivered in schools.
Right.
So we'll just have to wait and see how that affects people. Doubtlessly, it will affect people,
Right.
especially when we look at on the housing side, concern around taking away caps.
Yeah.
On rentals,
Yeah.
because already in our community,
Housing.
we're at a 1.8% vacancy rate, and
Right.
normally you'd want to be at about 3% as a minimum.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of how hard it is for people to find housing, let alone affordable housing.
Right, and that was the other thing. I wanted to circle back to that a little bit, because we wanted to bring that up about some of the challenges of finding affordable housing in this city, and what are some of the barriers that people are up against, and maybe any stories or insight that you could give us on the ground level of what people are up against in trying to find a place that, and I think if I'm correct, the statistic is that 50% of your income's going to just paying the rent.
Yeah, for
then,
a lot of people,
you
if
know,
they're below that low income
and
level.
exactly. So what are some of the things that they're up against here, and what do we need to be doing in the city to kind of ensure that affordable housing is made available to those folks that need it?
Well, we're definitely seeing interest from developers and landlords to create affordable housing, so that's good. We're hoping to see more of that. The federal housing strategy has put forward that they want to put money into that to help support developers who are building affordable housing. So we're looking forward to that in our community. In terms of barriers, you know, it's tricky because it really depends on the people. A lot of times you have two sides of the coin. So if you're a parent with multiple children, it gets very tricky to find housing that's big enough.
Right.
We're allowed to share a story of a beautiful young woman. Her name is Rose, and her family were struggling and eventually lost their home. And you know, they had multiple children, and it was really hard for them to find housing that they could all be in. So the family got split up.
Wow.
Okay.
And for her, the stress was so great that her hair started falling out. And she was really struggling in school because, you know, she was really feeling anxious and overwhelmed. And there was just a feeling that around her, the world kept turning and nobody else cared.
Yeah.
Like her family was being torn apart and her parents were under this huge stress. She was not getting to see her brothers and sisters. They weren't in the same schools because they weren't living in the same part of the city. You know, like those sorts of things are incredible. And if you stop and think about that for your own family, it would be absolutely heartbreaking and you wouldn't accept it. No. Right? No. But because you don't have housing, you have to take what you can. Yeah. And somehow we've decided as a society that's okay. Yeah. So, you know, I think there's that side of the coin of having adequate and appropriate housing to keep families together and enable people to stay where they want to be. They want to be where there's a good school, where their kids have their friends, right? Again, there's this thought of, well, if you can't do that, well, that's okay if we move you across town where your child now doesn't know anybody, right? Transportation is another issue because if you don't own a vehicle, you need to live somewhere where you can get public transit,
sure,
right? Because that's how you're going to get to work,
That's right.
and how your kids are going to be able to get around. So, you know, it can be really difficult to find housing, to your point, Kevin, where there's food.
Yes.
Right? Because we say that if
Easy
you
access
can't
to the
get
grocery
to a
stores.
grocery store in a single transit, so without having to transfer on the bus, then you're in effectively kind of a food desert. Because imagine lugging a family's groceries, a week's worth of
4
groceries,
kids, right?
and you've got kids and a stroller and everything else, and you've got to get on a bus, get off a bus, transfer, get on another bus. I mean, it just becomes untenable. It's a day's journey just to get your groceries.
Which I guess leads to another question. I mean, we've had a lot of conversation in this city about bus rapid transit and about doing something to address transit and so on. How, if at all, has the United Way weighed into that conversation?
We don't really have an opinion directly on what kind of transportation, just that transportation is important.
Yeah.
And if we really want to do something that's not, that is, you know, going to lift people out of poverty, making sure that they can get to places where they have good, affordable, healthy food, affordable housing, and a job. Yeah. That's really important. And sometimes solutions can be found without necessarily costing more money. United Way is the lead partner agency for London for All. Okay. And one of those tables at London for All, which is implementing the recommendation from the London for All report that the City of London commissioned, is around transportation. And there are a lot of jobs out on Veterans Memorial, right?
Okay,
Not the easiest place to get to
exactly.
if you're living in sort of the southwest of the city, which is where most of our affordable housing is.
Right.
So it was really a question of could between London Transit and the employers at those factories and develop a partnership so that we could just make sure that the bus schedule meshes the shift schedule.
Exactly.
Because it's not, if your shift starts at 6 a.m., it's not much good to you if the bus gets there at 6:10.
Right. Yeah.
So, but that doesn't cost any money per se. I mean, there's a logistics thing involved, but that really is that coming to the table, and I think that's the value add. that United Way can do, because we can bring all these partners to the table to have those conversations and say, you know, rather than just ignoring a problem or complaining about a problem, what could we do about the problem?
Right.
Right.
Now, I heard you say before we started, you mentioned a number, how much money you bring in, United Way, for Elgin, Middlesex, London. What is that number?
Well, we really try to focus on the impact,
Okay.
because we want every dollar to go as far as it can.
Possible, yeah.
And, you know, $10 well invested is more important than $100
Gotcha.
that aren't
Yeah.
well invested.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we really want to look at how much we can get,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can do matching, and how we can get corporate
Yeah.
partners involved, and gifts in kind, and volunteers, and really amplify what we raise.
Have the churches been involved in that effort in terms of, like, I just, as I hear you say that, I think about things like matching funds and gifts and stuff like that in the schools, the things that kids are doing in school.
Yeah.
And we talk about this sort of intersectionality, or how we might have our communities get involved with things that are happening in the public square. Are the churches getting engaged in this in any way? Is there more that we should be doing, I guess is the question.
I would always like to invite people to kind of reflect on that and consider what they might be able to do. We do product drives. We've just finished up our Give Cold Feet the Boot campaign, which is
Very
to get...
clever.
I like
I
that.
know. We're so into puns. You would just love our communications team.
That's right. 1 o'clock pun meeting.
Yes, that's right. Get out the Scotch tape. It's sponsored by 3M. So you have another campaign. You drape me in a shirt on a Sunday morning.
That's
Maybe you could
right,
tell
yeah.
people about that.
Yeah, so nationally we're part of the Unignorable campaign. And
We know how ignorable I am.
And you
Yeah.
got an unignorable shirt. Well,
Yes, I do.
imagine that.
Yeah, we wanted to amplify Kevin. I think that's dangerous.
People don't notice.
No.
But it's actually kind of cool, because United Way partnered with Pantone, and Pantone is the organization that actually develops colors for paint and pigment and dye. So, you know, when you go to the paint store and, you know, there's bazillion paint chips, well, those
Sure.
are all have actual numbers, which are
Yep.
Pantone numbers, which are
Okay.
the scientific ingredients that go into make that color. And so United Way said to approach Pantone and said, you know, we have this idea of having a campaign to try to help people pay attention to these issues. Could you help us develop a color? And so they actually went away, and very scientifically, and they had like psychotherapists and all kinds of people go into making colors. It's
Neat.
quite extraordinary.
Neat.
And then they came up with this color that is kind of, it's like a pinky peachy orange, but it's incredibly bright. And the idea is that it's a warm color.
I wouldn't paint my room the color.
No, you really wouldn't want to.
No.
It would blind.
It's
somebody.
it's unignorable.
It's unignorable. And so now we are draping things in
Yes.
the unignorable color. So you might see billboards around the city that are in this bright sort of neon orange.
I think Rob should be in an unignorable shirt.
Okay,
Can
well,
I get
will
an
be-
unignorable shirt, please?
I
I would like
Holy
to be
Trinity
unignorable.
St. Stephen's
Yeah.
people need to see the rector in an unignorable shirt.
Yeah, and all our staff and our volunteers, we have these shirts, and we wear them when we're out and about, especially like if they're going to be photos taken, you know, at check
Yeah.
presentations and stuff, because people always ask, well, what does your shirt say, and all that kind of stuff. It gives us a chance to have that conversation, because it is weird that you could walk past somebody sleeping on a park bench, but if your friend's wearing a neon shirt, you stop and ask them about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's very good. No, that's great. I mean, obviously, you guys got your hands in a number of things, and we could be here for hours talking about all the
yeah.
different things that you're touching
Incredible
upon.
that number of agencies. Right?
Oh, and yeah, it's amazing. And I was saying to Jennepher before, again, we were starting today. I had a little taste of that when I was in Chatham at the United Way. I was doing a little bit of volunteer work for them. And Karen Kirkwood-White, who is just
Love
retiring.
Karen.
Love Karen. She was a longtime director of the United Way down in the Chatham-Kent area and did some wonderful work there. But yeah, when you actually get in on the meetings and see some of the agencies and how they're functioning and the connections and partnerships that are being put together, it's an incredible thing that's been built over the years. So the city is so blessed to be able to have folks like you and agencies like you that you're with that are doing this work, because I can't imagine where we'd be.
Well, this is the thing.
Without you, I
And I
mean-
think not just in London, but in centres all across
of
the country.
course,
I mean,
yeah,
the work that United
yeah.
Way is doing. And for our listeners, wherever you're listening from, I think the reality is that, you know, if you're not aware of what United Way is doing in your community, go ask.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that we all need to get engaged. I mean, and that's a large part of what, I mean, Matthew 25, right? You know, Jesus tells the parable and says, you know what it's like, the kingdom of God is like, it's going to be like, I was hungry and you gave me food.
Yeah.
I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was lonely and in prison and you came and visited me. And the people will say, well, King, when did we do all that? And I say, well, I don't remember doing it. But likewise, he also says, I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was naked and alone and you didn't come and visit me. And the parable really is a call to all of us to take seriously what it means to get involved with the needs of our community. And that's where I see that sort of intersectional reality that we need to be called into. And so for me as a priest, I find it very heartening when Jennepher shows up at church on Sunday and when she gets up and she does the prayers that she often does and she writes them, and I can hear the justice coming through in what she's saying when she writes it, because I know that a lot of what you do in your work is instructed by your faith, and I know that a lot of what you do in your faith is instructed by your work. And I think that's really
such an important balance to have.
Part. So it's
and
a
especially
great
this time of year too. I mean, we're coming up
Oh, yeah.
toward Christmas, and we've been at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's been doing an Advent study on some of the themes of Advent, hope and peace and love and joy, and what we've come to at the end of it is to say, you know, as we approach that manger again, it's a reminder once again of our call to go to the places that God went to in the coming of the baby, which is the places that often are ignored by
The most
the other
vulnerable.
sections of society. It is the
Right.
most vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's in the back of the barn when the baby and the shepherds who nobody wanted to pay any attention to, and were the ostracized and got the first
Right.
glimpse of this new kingdom and possibility that could exist, and how important it is for us to step into those places. And that's what you're doing. And that's what the United Way
And
is
it's where you
doing.
find
It's so important.
incredible hope as well. You
Yeah.
know, when you think of that story and how that experience transformed those people and how they went out, you know, singing and sharing the story and sharing that joy. And you know, I shared a little bit of the story of Rose, and she just went through such a difficult time. But you know, through the program that she got connected with at United Way, she got after school support and help to stay in school. You know, advice for her family on finding housing, and people who just checked in on her on a regular basis and cared. And she says, you know, the most important thing was that I really felt that these people cared what was
Right.
happening in my life, and they
Right.
built that relationship. And you know, now she's in university. She's studying law. She wants to be a human
Oh,
rights
fantastic.
lawyer.
Yeah.
You know, she's
for her.
she's
Yeah.
going to save the world.
Good
Yeah.
for her.
And the truth of the matter is she is doing that. She's been transformed, and she is going out and
Right.
and sharing that, and that will have that huge ripple effect in every life. Every time somebody's life is touched, you never know where that's going to go,
Yeah.
and that's so exciting. 'Cause,
Yes, it is.
You know,
That's the powerful part of this work, isn't it?
yeah.
Oh, it is, and that's the stories that we really need to hear, aren't they? The
Yeah.
transformative stories of people's lives that were changed because someone walked into their darkness and said, "You're worthy, you're
Yeah.
worthwhile, you're loved. Let's get this thing on track, and how can we support you?"
Yeah.
And most people just need the tools,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that tool might be a hug, because they might
Sure.
just need to feel loved. That tool might be the skills to get an employment. That tool might be tutoring so that they stay in school. It could be a hot meal when they're hungry. Like, you never know what it is that somebody needs
Right.
but once they get that, they're golden.
Well, see, what I really love about that is, and one of the metaphors I often use is that of a toolbox, because I always say we don't all come equipped with the same tools in the toolbox.
No.
And what I like about what you're saying there is that a lot of the work that a number of agencies that the United Way is engaged in is really around the work of identifying, you know, what people have in their toolkit, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't have what they need, to sort of figure out, okay, well, let me lend you some wrenches here, because
Right.
you're not going to get that done if I don't give you a hand.
Right.
And that's really what's so critical. Our Advent study actually too was focused on the same sorts of things. We're using a Barbara Brown Taylor book called Learning to Walk in the Dark.
Yeah,
And it's a
book.
great book, and there's a little line in there we were talking about in our group last night about how, you know, we all have to enter into those dark places in some way, and that goes back to what you said earlier about not losing sight of the fact that we're all connected, right?
Yeah.
But it's when we step into the dark that we're most at danger of stumbling into something, right? And so sometimes we need to reach out a hand and get guided in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful for folks at United Way, for people like Jennepher and her team, and those who are on the service end of what you do, and the very dedicated work that you all do. I think it's really incredible.
Great.
Actually.
And so for those listening today, Jennepher, they want to help, they want to give, they want to just find out more information about the agencies and the work you do. Where can they go? How can they find all that out and support?
So you can always Google us. So it's United Way Elgin Middlesex. And our website's United Way Elgin Middlesex.ca.
And we'll get producer Ian to put that up on the.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. But I know a lot of times at this time of year, people want to help. They want to do something. Especially if you see somebody who's in distress or struggling, I would really advise direct people to the 211 service. Call, find out what service is available, because that's a big part of it, is that, you're saying about being in the darkness, is people don't realize that the services exist.
Right.
There are people there to help them through this.
Right.
But they need that connector. And then in terms of just the sort of the more sharp end of things, one of the programs we fund is London Cares, and they do a lot of different programming and work in the city, dealing directly with people who are on the streets in that street community. And they have a phone number that you can call if you see somebody and you're concerned, especially if the weather turns cold.
And we can add that number too.
So if you can add the London
Take
Cares
a look,
number.
folks, if you're listening to this, to go to the lower part of the thing and hook
It's all
that
in the
sucker up.
description.
It's all there, says producer Ian.
Very good.
Awesome.
All right, good.
Now,
Now,
on a very important matter. Sorry, I was going to say,
No,
and
go ahead.
I wanted to know if she had any sports interest.
okay, that's a good question.
Is that a good question?
Yeah. Ask Jennepher.
Okay, Jennepher, do you have any sports interest? Are you, Jennepher? Hey, do you watch the hockey?
I'm not a big hockey person,
What
so I
about-
know it's going
Okay.
downhill all the way now.
Well, no, we always do a little bit of checking in on what's going on with
We
our,
do, yeah.
our
We're
sports teams.
basketball in our family.
Basketball.
Oh, okay, all right.
Of
Well, we
course,
can
Effie
talk
plays
We can
basketball.
talk basketball,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
your team would be
Oh, well, the London Lightning.
the
Okay,
Lightning, of
she's a
course.
local,
yeah,
yeah, she-
good
Yeah.
for you.
Doing well?
Good for you.
They are, and we particularly love them because they do a lot in our community.
Sure.
They do a lot of stuff with
They
the
do,
youth
yeah.
and the kids.
True enough.
Great volunteering, and it's such a great experience when you go out to watch the games. They do a great job here at Bud Gardens of making sure that the games are really fun and fast-paced, and the team's doing well this year.
Very good. Now, I haven't been to a Lightning game here. I come from Windsor before, so I would go to the Express games.
Yeah.
So
Big rivalry.
But what I want to say is, it's good basketball.
It
Yeah.
is
I mean, that's the thing.
excellent.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is high
I've
quality
not gone.
basketball.
I need to get out and
They're
see it.
really
so
good.
London
yeah.
Lightning,
These are
if you're
good
listening,
players,
I could
yeah.
use some tickets.
That's right. Maybe we can do it that way.
No,
but
the
no, it's
quality
fun
of
to go
play
see.
is,
Oh, it's
is
fantastic.
fantastic, and
Yeah.
you feel like you're like literally on the court with them.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's
Well, I
really
could
great.
literally be. I've done stranger things, and then I usually get removed from the facility after that. But
That's right.
now, we're sort of up on the hockey thing. Like we get involved in a little bit of smack talk and so on. And I think we should let producer Ian express how he's feeling about his Maple Leafs.
How are you feeling about your Maple Leafs, Ian?
Should I know what's going on with my Maple
Oh
Leafs?
well, this is good. He's only half a fan.
There we
This
go.
guy.
That's right.
No, I've been like busy doing other things.
Yeah.
They're winning.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
that's good.
Like pretending you're Bill
Yeah,
Clinton
they're-
Hey.
on a sax.
Yeah,
They're winning.
that's good. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
They should be.
They should be.
Yeah. How are the Wings doing?
The Wings are struggling a bit, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm still watching
still
from
holding on to
afar
it,
and
right?
holding
Yeah.
on to hope, and there will
Okay.
come a day.
And
There will come a day when we will enter
Yeah.
into that promised land once again.
Yeah, there was a famous line in Newfoundland at one time said, one day the sun will shine and have not will be no more. It was
That's
a
right.
politician by the name of Brian Peckford who said, one day the sun will shine and have not will be no more.
I am looking forward to the World Juniors, though.
Yeah, that's coming
always
up. That's
fun
gonna
this
be
time
fun.
of year when we get
Yeah.
to cheer for Team Canada once again. And
What's
so
coming up,
that's good.
for those locally here who listen in the London area, you might be looking for a place to go hang out at Christmas Eve. We know a couple of communities that are hosting Christmas and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day services.
Right. Well, yeah, Holy Trinity St. Stephen's, the Big Blue Church on the corner of Wellington and Southdale. We're having services Christmas Eve at 7 p.m. and Christmas Day at 10 a.m. And also at 4:30 Christmas Eve, if you want to just go outside the city a little bit to an unknown spot that not
Beautiful.
a lot of people know about in Glanworth.
Yeah.
There's a little Anglican church called Christ Church.
Yeah.
And they're
Beautiful place.
one of our beautiful churches in the area, and we'll be there at 4:30 with a candlelight service, and some of the folks from the Glanworth area will be there as well. So great opportunity to come out to the county and enjoy a little bit of that celebration as well.
Yeah, and we're doing likewise over at St. Aidan's at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve, 4 p.m., and then again at 8 p.m., preceded by some caroling at 7:30 p.m. We like to warm up our vocal cords for a half an hour by singing. Our incomparable music director, David Weaver, likes to get everybody going with a bit of music. And then on Christmas Day, we have church again at 10:30. And part of our shtick there has been, my shtick really for the last 20-odd years, wherever I've been, is to tell people that the first 50 people who come get a very special gift. It's like a door crasher. People line
really?
up. People line
Okay.
up. I mean, nobody gives a gift like I give a gift. These are the most special gifts you'll ever get anywhere, people. Believe me. Many people are saying they love to go to St. Aidan's to get the gift. Believe me. Anyway, I have all these gifts for the first 50. Number 51, out of luck. Okay, just out of luck.
That poor soul.
And this year, it's an incredible thing. I mean, I think it's the sort of thing that you would normally hear on an ad. Boxing Day, Boxing Day, Boxing Day.
Church.
You don't want to miss this, folks. Come one, come all. We're doing this on Boxing Day, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve. Don't miss your opportunity to come celebrate Jesus.
Wow.
Well, who wouldn't want to show up to be the first 50 to that? That'll be a sermon for the ages.
Oh, yeah. It'll be a time. We're going to have a time, as we say in
We do
Newfoundland.
hope
We're going to have a time.
wherever you're listening, that you'll take time out to take part in worship services with your friends, your family, your communities, and
Check out your local churches
Yeah,
wherever
check
you
them
are.
out wherever you are.
I got a
wherever
little
it is.
gift for a couple of people.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I just released a little Christmas EP
Oh,
that I
hey.
was playing for Kevin.
Let me interrupt you for a second.
right.
Iain played, as we drove over here, this EP that he's released with 4 incredible Christmas songs on it.
Wow.
Tell people, all I wanted to interrupt to say was, it is quality work. And this guy, who's composed the theme music for this, his skills are unlimited. I hesitate to say much more because I'm afraid that, like the door crasher on Christmas Day, there's going to be a lineup of people trying to get Iain to go to work. But tell them about your EP.
Yeah, so I arranged and recorded and sort of produced 4 of my favorite-ish Christmas songs, and I released them onto YouTube, onto Bandcamp, which is like a website that I really don't know how it works, but apparently you can download stuff from it.
God is like that, Iain. We really don't know how it works, but we continue to visit.
Anyway, yeah, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go listen to it. Yeah.
Perfect. All
Free
right.
downloads?
Yeah, absolutely.
Free downloads.
I don't understand why.
You will want to play this at your home over your Christmas dinner. It is. I mean, I joke with Iain, but this is a really nicely done. He's a beautiful singing voice, and the arrangements that he's done are incredible. And he's got his own backing vocals and his own harmony and everything. It's really
Well,
quite
I'm going to
beautiful.
click like.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Jennepher, thanks so much for coming and
thanks
spending
for
time
having
and putting up with us and enjoying some time together. We wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. And I think this is our last our
Until
last
the new year.
podcast until the new year.
We'll be off for 2 or 3 weeks because
I won't see you guys until next year.
I know it's going to be
You
next.
going to be okay?
I'm going to be traveling to the Holy Land of Newfoundland.
Oh, you are?
I'm going for New Year's Eve, yeah.
Attaboy. Good.
And hopefully I get back out of there in one piece. I got a fun thing to do out there. I'm going to baptize my great niece.
Nice.
My great niece has given birth to a beautiful little girl, and I am now great Uncle Revy Kevy.
Nice. Very
Isn't
good.
that pretty cool?
That'd be a wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful trip out
Yeah.
there. And a good
Any
New
plans
Year.
for you for the holiday?
No, we're staying close to home. We got family here, so everybody will kind of be gathering in Mount Bridges.
Oh wow,
At,
Mount Bridges.
Yeah, at my wife's sister's place, and we'll have a quiet day Christmas after church,
Right.
Christmas Day that day. So that'll be good.
Anybody doing Festivus this year?
Festivus, no,
No.
but there will be an airing of the grievances
Oh,
after
yeah.
the podcast. So. I got a lot of problems with you people.
And now the feats of strength.
How do people find us, Kevin?
Oh, well,
Fill us
you know,
in,
if
fill
you're
us in.
listening to this, you've already found us. But you can always make sure to look us up at Vicars Crossing on YouTube. But if you want to send us a message, we have a Gmail, and that is vicarscrossing@gmail.com. If you'd like to tweet us or Facebook us, please go look those things up. We'd love to hear your feedback about how you like the program. And you can interact with us. We love hearing from our listeners.
Very good. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah,
Enjoy
Merry
until the new
Christmas to
year. We
all.
wish you all the best.
Yeah.
Blessings to all. And until we get together again on the Vicars Crossing from Crossings on Hyde Park in London, Kevin and I remind you to always look both ways.
Before you walk across the street with your eggnog.
Thank you for listening. Our hosts are Kevin George and Rob Henderson. Our producer and composer is myself, Iain, with original artwork done by Catherine Olenek. If you have any questions or want to know how to find us, tweet us at Vicars Crossing or find us on Facebook at The Vicars Crossing. If you have any other questions about anything heard on this podcast, leave us a comment or look in the description to find out more. Thanks!